should imagine walking this without these boardwalks, and that's what we were doing for the first 3-4 days. Also want you to imagine ladders going down cliff faces 40-50 feet high and on awkward angles. Don't have a lot of pictures to show, but that all happened. This is a beautiful walk. It's like this to Michigan. Oh, I'll be a happy clam.
My GoPro died at the ladder.
Did it? They should make it with better battery life.
What?
Like, it should get better battery life. But you still have a lot of video from like the
Pretty
start.
high quality in a tiny camera.
Yeah. And you have a lot of stuff from the start, which is good.
Yeah, and I also have another battery.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh. Then we're good. I thought that was your last one. My right knee's been bothering me. A little swollen. Nothing major. Okie doke. About 3 weeks ago, Connor and I went to the West Coast Trail. It's in southwest Vancouver Island, and we were there for about 8 days hiking.
Alright. So how was planning? How'd you guys decide to do this?
Planning, the planning that we did was stressful at times, difficult, but overall it wasn't so bad. We started in January to get like plane tickets. There was a sale, and just to kind of familiarize ourselves with the trail. Then closer to the day, we had to get food. We went to Bulk Barn, basically oatmeal for breakfast every morning, and then lunch was salami and cheese, and dinners were like pasta with cheese sauce. But yummy meals most of the time, except we got sick of salami near the end. That was terrible. But hey, good times.
So tell me a little bit about the trip. What was it like? How did your parents react? How did your friends react?
So the trip, once it happened, went off, I would say, without a hitch. We got into Victoria on May 9th, and we had to stay till the 11th because that was when the shuttle bus took us up to Port Renfrew, which is kind of west of Victoria, southwest of Victoria, on the other side of the island. And so in Victoria, we just kind of bummed around and kayaked, saw some seals. Yeah, the food was it was good. You always screw up a couple meals, but that's just part of it. We had a bag of dried strawberries, which were Satan, because they tasted like, I don't have a comparison on my mind right now. They tasted terrible. But we were hungry, So we ate them and immediately regretted it, and it makes me sick thinking of them to this day. And then there's also an episode where we didn't rehydrate the beans properly, and we both got sick, and Connor thought he was going to die. That's all. That's all part of it.
It's true.
It's true.
I was dying. Cool. So what was the rest of the trip like? Overall, is the first section harder, second section?
Yeah, so overall, I would say is much more difficult. Like, it's incredibly more difficult. It's a lot more ups and downs, and a lot more ladders into riverbeds, and then up huge sets of ladders back out of riverbeds. There's a couple suspension bridges over these canyons. It was pretty crazy, and then towards the end it flattens out, and it's more just like boardwalk. So it's nice to end on that instead of going the other way where you're just kind of waiting for it to get hard and you're not really enjoying the trail. Yeah, so it was 8 days. It was a lot of fun. There was no complaints. We didn't have any rain except in the morning, but like no rain during the day, which is a blessing. And yeah, it was a great time.
What kind of wildlife do you expect to see on the trail?
So in terms of wildlife, we saw whales, lots of whales. We saw lots of seals, lots of sea lions, slugs, literally this big, this long. Sea lions, seals, whales, birds, bald eagles, ferret things, sea otters. You could see wolves, cougars, or bears. Can be seen on the trail, but we didn't see any signs of any of them really. I might have seen like a paw print of a cougar in the mud at one point. But
So I heard there's this little place called Chez Monique's about halfway through the trail. How's that?
Chez Monique's is the bright light at the end of a very muddy tunnel that you've been climbing through for 4 days, and she's just waiting there with juicy burgers in hand. And she hands them to you, and you cry. Well, you weep. It's not a cry. You weep. In happiness. Fresh burgers. She has this little like restaurant on an Indian reserve, so she doesn't have to abide by any Health Canada standards or anything, because literally a shack. But the burgers are juicy and delicious and amazing. Fantastic.
There are some places still left in this world that only the most intrepid travelers will ever experience. British Columbia's West Coast Trail is one of them. Its coastal rainforest and windswept beaches hold countless stories of ancient trading routes for local First Nations, of shipwrecks and sailors, being named the Graveyard of the Pacific in the early 1800s. It was constructed as a lifeline for those who dared sail beyond the reefs and breakers of Vancouver Island's southern coast. Today, the West Coast Trail is considered the hike of a lifetime, a bucket list experience. The region now covered by the West Coast Trail passes through the traditional territory of the Pachidat, Dididat, and Huayat people, Nuchanuth peoples who have inhabited the area for over 4,000 years. Native trails, used for trade and travel, existed in the area prior to European contact. European use of the trail was originally for the construction and maintenance of a telegraph line between Victoria and Cape Beale. Due to the high number of shipwrecks along this stretch of coast in the late 1800s, this trail got the nickname the Graveyard of the Pacific. The Pachina Point Lighthouse and the Dominion Life-Saving Trail were constructed for this reason. The reefs and breakers off the west coast of Vancouver Island had long posed a serious danger to navigation, and at the start of the 20th century, life-saving infrastructure on the sparsely populated island was still primitive in spite of heavy coastal traffic that serviced the Pacific coast between San Francisco and Alaska. Myself, as well as my friend Daniel Hackborn, decided to take this trip together in May of 2015. We decided to start at Port Renfrew and travel north. The southern parts of the trail are far more challenging than the flatter area in the north. Overnight hikers must buy a permit, as only a set number of people are allowed to be on the trail at any one time. However, individuals are permitted to visit during the day at no expense. The trail itself winds through forests, bogs, and beaches. It passes old-growth trees, waterfalls, streams, and thick patches of deep mud. Along the coast, the trail includes sand and pebble beaches, headlands, and exposed shelf and boulders at low tide. The trail often diverts inland to avoid dangerous surge channels and impassable headlands, where cliffs descend straight into the sea even at low tide. Although in some areas, the trail follows both a beach route and an inland route, which hikers must select between. Portions of the beach sections can be made impassable by high tides. Tide tables and maps are very useful and are issued by Parks Canada staff to all hikers prior to starting this ridiculous trek. In some inland areas, the trail consists of boardwalk, but care must be taken even there, as the boardwalk can be in disrepair and covered with moss and mud can be very, very fragile. The main designated campgrounds along the way feature bear boxes for safe storage of food, an outhouse, and a stunning view of the Pacific Ocean. When the sea fog is not present, this fog offers a unique perspective as the beach and sky are clear, while the view just offshore is blocked. There are also numerous smaller campsites along the trail with varying amenities, which can offer a quieter experience away from the often crowded main campsites. As 30 people may start the trail from each direction each day, it is not unusual to find many groups of hikers overnighting at any given main campsite, but due to the sheer size of this trail, you don't see many. The trail is still extremely rugged and requires a high level of fitness, knowledge, and skill to complete, although in the last 10 to 15 years it has been upgraded to facilitate hiking and safety for those with less experience. This has changed the nature and challenge of the trail somewhat, but has made it easier for hikers to explore the coast. It has been recommended that hikers travel in groups as a measure of safety, but some hike the trail solo. To cross the larger rivers and streams, hikers must ride cable car suspensions, while smaller or lower waterways are bridged only by fallen logs, or may even require wading. There are two waterways that require a boat to cross: the Gordon River at the southern trailhead and the Nitnat Narrows near the midpoint of the trail. A ferry service is operated by the local First Nations. The trail includes some 3 dozen ladder structures, some of them 30 to 50 feet, that hikers must ascend or descend. Hikers usually take an average of 7 days to complete the trail, although Daniel and I took 8 as we took a rest day at Tsuziat Falls.
I remember one day, it was the day to go to Tsuziat Falls, and it was a 7-hour hike. So we left at 9 and we got in at, that would be 4, but it was closer to 5 actually, with our lunch break and stuff. But the terrain itself near the end wasn't even difficult to get to the falls, but we had been walking for 7 hours with 60-pound bags on our back, and we were just, our shoulders were just in a lot of pain. It was brutal. Yeah.
After the hike to Tsuziat Falls, Daniel and I had conquered the most difficult part of the journey. The longest hike, the tough terrain. It was smooth sailing from this point on. At this point, we had 6 days of hard hiking under our belts. We only had 2 more days left of hiking and 1 more campsite, Cribbs Creek. There's only about 16 kilometers left on the trail. Most of it was boardwalk, making the remainder of the journey much easier. We concluded our journey at Bamfield on the 18th and had our flight out of Victoria 2 days later and returned safely home on May 21st at around 3 a.m.